Don Mazzella here again for Small Business Digest. We have someone who's right now in Costa Rica, lucky her, and but she's here to talk about Susanna Mittermaier is here to talk about the subject that a lot of people are thinking about. Some of them have to effectuate going back to the office. It's a trend. A lot of people don't like it. So Susanna, but more importantly, um, Susanna is of the opinion that the employer should recognize the trauma of it. But anyway, we're going to let her explain it all. Okay, Susanna, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
As we ask all our guests, first tell us a little bit about yourself personally, then about your company, and finally a website.
Great. So my name is Susanna Mittermaier, and I'm a psychologist and grew up in Austria and started to work in Sweden as a psychologist, both in child oncology and also in psychiatry. And I worked with people with many different diagnoses, also stress, burnout, anxiety, depression, and everything else, and work with psychotherapy, staff counseling, and so on. And I soon realized that it's very dramatic out there with how approaches are being used in, counseling and help. It's all about the problem. It's seldom about the possibility. So I looked for different options to do my work, and I created a new paradigm for psychology and therapy called pragmatic psychology. I wrote a couple of books, do keynote speeches and talks worldwide nowadays, and work also with companies. And yeah, so one of the companies I work with is also Access Consciousness and the bars, which is a special way of creating change and ease for you and your body. And yeah, so this is a whole new modality where you, whenever you are in a situation that you think you cannot deal with, something that seems to be overwhelming, rather than trying to, look for what is the problem and fixing it, you are straight going to, where's the possibility in that? And it's basically a pragmatic approach, hence pragmatic psychology. Pragmatic means doing what works. So this is what I'm doing worldwide. And we have, like, my webpage is susannamittermaier.com. And we also have the Bars in Business webpage. Yeah.
Okay. Can you say which of the two, give us those web pages?
Excuse me?
One of the web pages. Can you, they're dot what?
It's barsinbusiness.com.
Okay. All right. Well, with that impressive background, and I liked when your people contacted me. Um, People are reluctantly, in many cases, going back to work because, particularly in larger companies, people want people at their desk. But yet, if I read what you're saying, you believe that the companies should understand that this is a great sacrifice or great change for people who discovered they can do almost as well at home. So with that, the floor is open to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so if you are someone who is employed, you want to know that you have choice. It's not always the easiest to have someone tell you what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it. Anytime someone tells you what you're supposed to do, what's the usual reaction? Well, for most people, it's going into defense or into fight. Either they fight themselves, or they fight the boss or the company, or they create some kind of stress in the environment. So whenever you tell someone what the new rules are, what are you creating? So as a leader, as a CEO, you want to be very clear on what you're creating with what you're saying. You want to be very clear with what are you creating with what you are suggesting or what you're telling your employees. If you're telling someone what to do, usual reaction is not, oh, like, wonderful. It's like, rather than telling people what to do, change it into a question. Like, ask people questions, because anytime you tell someone what to do, they fight. When you ask someone a question, you invite them to add their awareness. You invite them to add their knowing. So one of the suggestions I have for anybody who works with employees is to ask them, hey, how is it going for you? What would you like? What would make it easier for you to do your job, your work? Because then in that way, you have your employees, the people you work with, on board, and they can add, their awareness. Most leaders, most entrepreneurs or CEOs have the point of view that they have to control everything. They have to get things right. But if you have the point of view that you have to get things right, or you have to control them in a certain way, you don't give much playground to the people that actually matter, which is your employees, the people who do the job, the people who move your business forward. So this is one of the things I'd suggest doing, because look at what you are, like, how you're dealing with your employees, and ask yourself, what am I creating with this? What will this lead to? What future will this create?
But in effect, you're asking people to build a team, and but the pandemic broke down the teams into individuals being in their own dens almost. And a lot of them seemed to be unhappy leaving their dens. We did a focus group recently of 5 individuals, not a big grouping of people who were being literally told that they had to now begin the 1-hour commute into New York City that they had not had for almost 3 years. And how were they feeling about it? And the reaction was unanimous. Every one of them was looking for another job. And these were 5 random people. But the purpose of it was to identify what could be done to keep these people.
Yep. And this is where people so often look for a solution. They look for another answer. What can we do to keep these people? It's, and then people might get together in the, HR group, or with the people who are, dealing with this kind of things. And then they're looking for a solution rather than go to the people who are doing the job, like ask them, what do they require to make this easier on them? Because whenever we know, as all of us, whenever we know that we have choice, it's great. We feel wonderful. We feel included. Whenever we feel that we don't have choice, usually the fight starts.
Mm-hmm. But in this case, when employers say you've got to come back to the office, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So, you can create the environment of choice in different ways. You can create it by, asking them what they would like to do, and it's about, coming back or not coming back. But if that is not possible in the environment you have as your, business, because you need people to actually be there, because that's maybe what you've decided or what creates more, then find out a way where you, in a different way, can create choice for them. Maybe there's some other way inside the job when they're there where they can feel like, okay, so now that I have to be there, how else can we make it easier on you, for you to be there? Is there any other way things would be easier on you? And maybe different solutions, different possibilities show up that way.
Well, let me throw somewhat of a curve at you, because in the Wall Street Journal last week was an article about a study that said people who are promoted either to the first or second promotion have a tendency then to look for another job. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar with the study, and what are your thoughts on
that? What I would suggest is let people leave. It's like holding on to someone is not something that creates more for your business and your company. It actually is based on the point of view that there's not enough people out there. So if you have a point of view of lack, of there's not enough people, that's what you're creating. I mean, your point of view creates your reality always. Like I'm working with companies who have learned to let go of people whenever it doesn't work or whenever they want to leave. And it creates so much freedom for them, and it creates so much freedom for the company. And there's always like a space opening up for the next person to come in. It's like from that, it's really like, how do you see the world? How you see the world is how you create it. If you have the point of view, there's not going to be a better person coming, that's always what you're going to create, or you look for the evidence to validate the rightness of your point of view. But if you're, okay, who else is possible? You actually throw a question out there, like, how can we, like, who's possible that is even better than the person that just left? Then you set yourself up for receiving someone else. And again, the people that I work with, the companies, they've learned to do this, and there's never a shortening of staff, because the next one is just around the corner, or the next one shows up like a short time after, because they have a different point of view, because they have a different perspective on their creations.
Well, particularly the first and second level, you're taking the time to train someone, maybe out of school. Then you had him or her for 1 or 2 years. You've reached a point where you promote them so that he or she can then manage other people, and then all that goodwill is gone.
Yep. But that's also like a point of view that, you know, people use to hold on to what they've created. Yes, you invested time. Yes, you invested money in training that person. I've done this many times. And then they realize, because of your training, they realize oftentimes, oh, wow, I'm capable of so many things. You actually empowered them to see what they're capable of. And then they might go, okay, I'm off to something else. But that's also, what if we just have a more benevolent and more generous way of being with people? Because if you have that point of view, it definitely creates more for your company. You know, if you have the willingness, even if you spend money and time, you have the willingness to let them go, again, you set yourself up for a whole new environment where more people can come in. You know, it's the same whether you deal with money or people. Whenever, you know, we're being penurious and hold on to something and think it's all about saving, well, then you're going to create so much less money or less people. So it's just like, again, it's your point of view. What point of view are you choosing that creates your world?
You keep saying something I find interesting. Set your environment up. You believe that you can set your own environment up rather than have it imposed upon you.
Yep,
I hear you.
Definitely. Yes, I do definitely. I mean, this is not something we grew up with, most of us. We haven't really learned that we can create our environment. We have learned that we are led by our environment, like whatever you grew up with, your parents, your culture, your religion. It's something that people think, okay, this is what's shaping my world and I have no choice. Well, I don't have that point of view. For me, it's like, we all have the capacities to lead our world and to create our world. It's just a choice away, whether you go, I'm going to be led, or I'm going to be someone who leads.
But it's very difficult to give up the comfort of your prior work.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge to give up your comfort, because it feels good. You know everything, the positive parts, but you also know the negative parts. And it's interesting because a lot of people, there's also studies out there that say, okay, people in our world are rather holding on to what's negative rather than not having anything else, whether it's a relationship they hold on to, or someone. They rather have something in their lives, even if it's negative, rather than having nothing. So yes, we are very comfortable with our limitations often, and it's not wrong to be that. But then at the end of the day, you can ask yourself, is that enough for me? Or would I actually like to have more? And then most people go, I actually would like to have more than my limitations. And that sets you off to see way more possibilities than you've seen before, with having the point of view of lack.
It's interesting because years ago I talked with a police psychiatrist and about why do women who are beaten by their husbands stay with their husbands rather than leave. And she could not give a really firm answer outside of saying the fact the devil you know is the devil you prefer.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting how, people's psyche and all the things we do, it's never about logic. Like, we cannot logicize why we do things, and like limitations and problems are never logical. They're just like insane. And yeah.
And that's fascinating. But now, to wrap some of what we've been saying, can you kind of summarize how you can help control your create your environment?
Yes. So like the first step is the choice to do so, the willingness to create your environment and to make a choice in your own world to go, okay, I might have enjoyed my little box of limitations. It's been wonderful. It's been comfortable. And I'm going to ask myself a question to get really clear with myself. Is this enough for me? And if it's a no, you just gained a lot of clarity. And that's definitely the first step, having clarity on what is true for you. We know oftentimes what's true for other people. We know what other people need from us. We're very good at, satisfying other people's needs, but we seldom know what's true for us. So that's like the first step of, okay, what's true for me? I'd like to have more than the limitations that I've been dealing with. And yeah, and then the next step is really, okay, so what would I like to have as my world? What would I like to have as my life? How could that look like? And then getting clarity on what that could be. And that way you use the tool of asking a question. Every time you ask a question, you will gain more awareness, because it will show you, okay, this is something I could do. You get more ideas, your perception increases. So this is the first step, how you could go into leading rather than being led.
But it's getting people to ask those questions. Sometimes they're afraid to ask that question.
Yep.
How do you get them to ask the question?
It's really a practice, because we have not been taught to ask questions. Like, from the moment we grew up, we've been taught to have answers. We have gotten a lot of answers when we grew up, from our parents. Do this, don't do that. This is right. This is wrong. This is good. This is bad. So there's a lot of answers. And when we get to school, again, we're supposed to deliver answers. So most of us have not practiced to ask questions. So just start, just like be clear on, okay, maybe it's a simple question. What else is possible that I haven't seen here? What else is possible in this situation that I have not considered yet? Open question, and usually like feels really good to ask that question, because it shows you, wait a second, there is more possible than I thought there is. I didn't know. I didn't even think about it. I only saw the problem. So now that I ask a question, oh, something is getting lighter in my world. And that's something we can start with. I've been working with people from different companies, and one of them was a doctor, and she said, oh my God, like, this asking questions is so new to me, because my job is to give people answers. My job is not been to ask them, hey, what's true for you? What does your body know? What are you aware of? So she said, oh my God, my work is changing a lot since I ask questions. And it's totally different to work with my patients.
Well, let me ask you this question. Is there a difference between men and women approaching this time of change?
I mean, limitations are liked both by men and women. I think there's not much difference, but maybe the way they deal with the limitations is a bit different. Like not all of them, like most men, not all of them, are maybe have a more tendency to deal with it themselves and cave into their own world and not talk about it and try to find a way to deal with it. Women maybe go and talk about things more. Maybe that's a bit of a difference, but I think overall limitations, men and women, we all love them.
Well, the limitation seems to me is the courage to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. The courage to look at it, the vulnerability to look at it, the letting go of the need to being right. I mean, most people are rather right than free. So, I mean, that is true for both men and women.
Well, your website again for people who are interested?
It's SusannaMittermaier.com, and also Bars in Business. And like the Bars in Business is something I highly recommend. It's a wonderful, relaxing treatment that Access Consciousness offers, where you can like learn to like receive and relax. It's something we've been doing, offering in different companies and businesses, where, you know, people come in and do the bar sessions on them, and employees can just go, okay, I can for a moment just relax and receive and have a change my point of view, change my perspective on whatever is going on in my workplace. And then after it, I can deal with whatever's going on in a totally different way, rather than contracting, being more relaxed and expanded.
Because we're a program, small business. Let's go back. What would you recommend to someone who's got a company and is now looking at all of these problems? How does he or she start to get some of these answers, do some of these questions?
Yeah, I would start by, if you are a CEO, a leader of the company in different ways, try not to do it all by yourself. I mean, don't try to just find solutions for your employees. Find it together with them, you know, like receive from your employees. It's not like it's kind of like, you know, when you have children, you try to do everything for your children, but your children know a lot of things. They know what works for them, so include them. It's the same with employees. Ask them, like include them. Don't try to do the hard work yourself. Let yourself be contributed to by your employees. Ask them what makes their job easier, what would make it easier and more fun to be at this workplace. It takes a lot of like heaviness and load off your shoulders if you don't try to find solutions yourself.
Well, we have just a couple of minutes left. What would you like to leave our audience with?
Well, a big factor for success is actually happiness. And it's something that's not valued in our society, in our world yet. Maybe it's going to change, but it's truly like happiness. If people are happy and relaxed, oh my goodness, they're so much more creative and willing to help you and contribute to you. So it's like, ask yourself, how can I increase the happiness quota in my workplace? Or at least work with yourself. Like, what if you learn and choose to be happy and value that more? You know, what if business can be about the joy of it, not the struggle and the hardship of it? I think we could be way more creative, all of us.
Well, on that note, Susanna, I'm Mittermaier, do I pronounce it correctly?
Yes.
Okay. My audience is used to me butchering names, but it's been a very illuminating time with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.